Hey guys, this is a surprise live that I am going to be doing with Gila Glassberg, intuitive eating dietitian. I'm waiting for Gila to request to join. We did not announce that we were doing this, but we are going to be talking about diet culture, intuitive eating, health at every size. I'm going to be talking with Gila Glassberg again. I'm waiting for her to join. Um, Here. I'm just waiting for her to join. Hey, Gila.
Hi, Rachel.
Okay, I'm so excited for this. I was saying how this was like a surprise live that we're doing on a really important topic.
hmm
So I guess I'll let you take the lead. We're going to save this for 24 hours on my page, and then we'll save it to YouTube, and it'll be on Gila's website also, available for viewing.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for doing this, Rachel. Um, First, I'm just going to say this because I always tell people this. First of all, I love you, Rachel. You're amazing and you're spreading such an important message. And second of all, I'm feeling a little bit nervous, but you were the one that told me that when you feel nervous, it means that you really care.
Yeah.
So I've told a lot of people that, and I said, no one's ever told me that in my whole life. Everyone's always said, don't be nervous, it will be fine, and it's very annoying. So I love that you say that.
Yeah. So I
Uh,
guess just introduce yourself, like tell people who you are, what you do.
Okay, so my name is Gila Glassberg. I'm a registered dietitian, so I'm clinically trained in nutrition. I have my master's in nutrition, and I'm also certified in intuitive eating. I'm an intuitive eating counselor. And Intuitive Eating is a book written by two registered dietitians, and it's completely well researched, and it's an amazing book. And I really fell in love with it because I was working in the field for many years doing traditional nutrition and dietetics, and I just really wasn't feeling fulfilled. I felt like I was pretty much like the food police,
Right.
and it was like such a bad feeling. Like I was working in a nursing home, and I guess like being clinically trained, it's like, oh, this person has diabetes. Like you have to give them like nutrition education not to eat too much. I'm like, they're 80 years old. Like, nebuch, that's so really sad and annoying.
Like let them enjoy.
Yeah. Let them
Yeah.
enjoy. I did have a few like really good bosses that were like, that's totally a quality of life call. And like, that's like, you don't put a 80-year-old on a diet anyways. But like, I had other people that were like, yeah, you need to talk to them about like all that fried chicken. And I'm
Mm.
like, okay, that's crazy. Um, so yeah, so I was doing it for a few years. I really didn't do it that long before I felt like I can't do this. And then I was like, shoot, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can't do private practice because private practice dietitians put people on diets, and I kind of didn't want to do that. But and I didn't even at the time I didn't think I was like steeped in diet culture or anything like that. But I was still really, restricting or considering foods good or bad, or maybe even guilting or shaming people.
Mm.
And that's when I looked to the research and I found intuitive eating. I didn't find it on my own. Rena Reiser introduced it to me, who's incredible also, and she's also an intuitive eating counselor. And she actually introduced us, Rachel.
Yeah.
And now I work in Woodmere. I have a private practice, and I help women heal their relationship with food using the principles of intuitive eating and, my nutrition background.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so I wanted to like interview you, Rachel, because I mean, you're always spreading like such an important message here on Instagram, and we've done, live workshops together. But I just kind of wanted to ask you, like, I know you've said this before on Instagram that like even a year or two you were still interested in dieting and it was still something that was like really a part of your life. But what turned you on to intuitive eating? Like, what was the switch for you?
So yeah, something that I do talk about a lot on here is that it was just over a year ago that I was on a diet. And I like stumbled upon like Tiffany Rowe, her account. And she's a social worker. She happens to have had an eating disorder and she works with eating disorders. And she was talking about intuitive eating and being anti-diet. And I'm like, what is that? And I was on a diet at the time. And I'm like, I've never heard of that. What is that? And the more I started learning about it and hearing about it, and I was on this diet and like really hungry, and yeah, I was losing weight. And of course, I was getting all the compliments, and I felt good because I was thin and fitting into stuff that I hadn't worn in a while. And then I went on winter break with my family, and like I didn't know what to eat, and I was stressed out, and I kept like texting, the person who was like kind of coaching me on the diet, and I'm like, I don't know what to eat, and I'm stressing out, and I can't have this, and I can't have cereal, and I can't have a grilled cheese, and I can't and there wasn't really anything to eat where we were. And then at the same time, I was still reading about this intuitive eating and anti-diet, and I was so sick and tired of torturing myself. And it clicked. Like I saw a post one day where she said, like, it was like, think about how many diets you've been on. Like, when are you going to realize like your body keeps going back to this weight? Like maybe that's where it's supposed to be, And I was like, oh my God, like, yes, and it's not like, what is that weight doing for me? I'm much older than I was, when I weighed the weight I was trying to get to. I have 3 children, thank God. I don't need to be at a certain number anymore. Like, I don't need to be obsessed with being a certain size, fitting into clothes literally that I have in my closet since I was in high school. Like, I don't need to do that anymore. And I was just like, I just got so sick of it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to look into it more. And even when I started intuitive eating, I was still kind of the mentality of like, yeah, okay, I get it. You know what? Like, you could be overweight and healthy, but there's certain weights, like, you really need to lose weight to be healthy. Like, okay, up to a certain point, So even though I wasn't fully on board with intuitive eating, health at every size, I was kind of like, yeah, it's for some people, but like really fat people, they need to go on diets. And the more I started reading, and the more I started reading research, I love reading like research papers. I love printing them out all, 100 pages and going through it myself to see if, and this is something that's important to know. I like to see if researchers' conclusions and what they write in their abstract, if it matches up with what the research really shows, because you'll find a lot of the time, sometimes researchers will make conclusions that contradict what they actually found in their research. And people don't look. People don't, go and see what they actually did. So I like to see for myself, like, is that really what you found? Or are you kind of twisting your data and interpreting it to fit your goals and your, what you want to present? So I was reading a lot of research, and I was reading Body Respect by Linda Bacon. And I read Evelyn's book, Intuitive Eating. And then I ended up taking her course also for practitioners.
She's incredible.
She's amazing. She is so like energetic, and she's just such a wonderful, like just like a great, fun, awesome person. For that alone, like she could like, sell me anything at this point. I was like, I just love everything you say, and then the more I read, the more I was like, I can't even believe that I ever bought into this, that I ever thought that it was important for me to be a certain weight, or that it was important for other people that I knew. I judged people like beyond, like I was so judgmental of people's bodies and their movement or lack thereof, and what they were putting in their mouths, and and what was going on with them because of how they looked. I would be like, well, if they lost weight, like it might be better for them, or whatever it is. Like, I was so guilty of that. And I just, I think part of like my healing in this whole process also is like learning to forgive myself for a lot of the judgments that I made about other people, and maybe the things that I, like when I encouraged people, oh, you look great, or stay on that diet, or go on that diet, like pushing people to do that, and complimenting them. And especially people that I know that went on diets and now they've gained the weight back. I don't want them to think that like I'm like judging them, or I'm like, oh my God, you're fat again. Like, I just feel a lot of guilt that I was one of those people that was like, wow, you look incredible, you're so healthy now. So there's a lot of like work mentally that has to be done for me, not just in terms of my own stuff, but just of like how I participated in diet culture as someone who is in a smaller body. And I have that like thin privilege that no matter how big I was always kind of acceptable to society. So in that way, like I didn't experience what people in bigger bodies do. And I was part of that problem of like stigmatizing them and judging them and telling them what's in their best interest to make them healthy. And that's like really
scary and sad, and I'm
Yeah.
so thankful that now I don't believe those things, and that now I'm able to educate other people and spread that message of like, health is not a body weight, it is not a clothing size, it's not something that you can see,
Yeah.
in that size. And health is not just your body and what you eat. Health is so much more than that. And as someone who is in the mental health field, like, why wasn't I more aware of that? Why was I pushing that narrative of like, well, if you're thin and you weigh a certain whatever, then your life is you'll feel better about everything. But again, it's supposed to show you can be a really intelligent person. Like, I'm super intelligent. But no, you can be like an educated, intelligent person, and you could still buy that garbage. You can still buy into that toxic message,
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a person who's kind of immersed in that world, like, and you're learning right now, like, oh my God, this, I can't believe that I ever believed that stuff. Like, I would say, you don't have to stay in that shame, and you don't have to be, like, what's wrong with me that I believe that? Like, understand that the powers of society and diet culture,
Sure.
yeah, they're so powerful
Mm-hmm.
that you can be a really smart, well-rounded, educated person and you still believe it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I actually I want to hear more about like like I do this with my clients, but like it sounds like diet culture was really ingrained in your head. Like, so I want to hear more about that, but I also want to point one thing out about the research that you were saying. So I went to Queens College and I did have a lot of diet culture professors, but I also didn't. And I had an amazing professor, Professor Kant. She was like so brilliant, and she's the one that taught us about the research methods. And it's really stuck in my head that so many people say, like, I was even at the gym today. I feel bad saying this, but I was at the gym today, and this instructor, she goes, everyone should have chocolate milk. I just read an article that chocolate milk is really good for post workout. So I was thinking, like, people read articles and they don't know how to read articles. They don't know how to read research. They don't know the strength of the research methodology. They don't know how many people were in the sample. And they're not regular people who don't, like, maybe not in the medical field or whatever, are not educated that like there's a way to read a research article, and like you're saying, the abstract might not be in line with what the research is showing, number one. And number two, also what this professor said was like, notice that if Pepsi puts out um,
Right.
article that's promoting their product, the research is probably skewed. Not just
Yeah.
Pepsi, any food company that decides to do their own research, they're skewing the research to so that you'll buy their product. So I,
Yes.
I really want people to know that.
Yeah. That's important to know who's funding the research for sure, because that's going to play a big role in what the outcome is. They're going to be looking for a very specific outcome. So if you have this like Council Against Obesity funding a research paper on the efficacy of diets, like, of course they're going to tell you that diets work. Or on the risks of obesity, of course they're going to tell you that obesity is going to kill you, because that's their whole angle, that obesity is dangerous. So it's so important to know that the research that you're looking at, who it's funded by, who the researchers are, what their background is, what their mission is. That's really important, because you want to know if there's any biases there,
Right.
And I know that Linda Bacon specifically, she always says she takes no money from any of these big
Wow.
organizations for her research, because she wants to have that integrity, that she is not like kowtowing to anyone. She is just looking at the research and interpreting it honestly without anyone else's, motives in mind, which is
Yeah.
that's important. You want to know that that research is true and real, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And just to say one more thing about that is that like it's hard to get clients once you become an anti-diet dietitian because weight loss sells, right? Like these things sell. And I've even had like business coaches tell me like maybe just like put weight loss on your website or something like that. And I'm like, I don't want to sell weight loss. And they're
Right.
like, yeah, but you have to cater to like what people need. Like it doesn't really matter. Like people will pay you if you could help them. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. Like I'm not gonna do that. Like it is your integrity. Like
Yeah.
this is really important. Like think about so this is what I wanted to go back to. So you are a very intelligent person and you're a highly educated person and you're working in the mental health field, but you still have this very intense diet culture mentality about like fat people are bad, skinny people are good, I need to be skinny. So So walk me through like your childhood and your relationship with food as a kid. Where does that come from?
So growing up, I was definitely around people that dieted. I was always like a small build, so I never struggled with my weight. I could always like eat whatever I wanted, and I looked the way I did. Like I never gained, I was just normal. Um, Foods were not really restricted in our house. We really had everything. Like it was, there was like barbecues on Sundays and birthday parties with ice cream and cake. And like there was never any of that in terms of like what was allowed into our house. But I did have family members who struggled with weight. My mom was overweight my entire life. She was in a bigger body. But the irony is though that she'd always be like, yeah, like I'm bigger, but like I'm healthy. And I would always like roll my eyes like, you're not healthy, mom.
Right.
Like in my head think it, I would never say it. But I was
Right.
like, "You're healthy, like you're so big, you can't be healthy."
Right.
And happens to be, thank God she's 75 years old and
Wow.
she looks like she's 40, you
Uh-huh.
know. She's in a bigger body, yes, but she's working full time still, energy, like okay, she gets a cold here or there, she has some health things, but like she's healthy,
Right.
She's
Yeah.
in better than my dad, who was thin his whole life and always dieting and exercising. He's had more health issues than her.
Right.
It's just so interesting that she would always be like, I'm healthy. And I'd be like, yeah, right. No, you're not.
Right.
She is.
Yeah.
But she struggled with weight her whole life. She did a lap band surgery. I remember when I was like in high school because she was, the doctors were telling her she's so overweight. And, like there was a lot of like, she wasn't treated so nicely by people because of her weight. So I was always hearing comments in my house about her weight. Don't eat that. That's not for you. Do you really think you need that? I know that she felt like my dad was like ashamed to be around her because of how she looked. She had like a lot of her stuff with weight. And again, I had siblings who struggled with weight. So I always saw it, and I always saw people dieting. And my dad he did the cabbage soup diet, he did the South Beach diet, and my sisters did the Atkins. Like everybody was doing a diet, so I definitely knew about it. I never went on those because I didn't have to, and I ate what I want. As I approached like high school, when everyone starts obsessing with how they look and whatever, of course I was like, oh my God, I'm so fat. I had body image issues. I was again super small. Like I was a really thin kid, always. And then it kind of like from there, like again, I was never really on a diet, but I definitely had some disordered eating stuff. Like I wouldn't eat until like lunchtime, and then I would like binge on like chips and soda, and then I would like starve till dinner. Maybe I would eat a little dinner, and that was it. Like I really was not eating properly at all. Then I remember like when I was in college, again, kind of just like wanting to stay small. So I started exercising to be skinny, not to be. I went to the gym because I didn't want to be fat. So I went to the gym. I hated the gym. I did not like it. I didn't want to sweat, but I went because that's what you have to do because God forbid you should gain a pound. The gym, again, disordered exercising behaviors. And I remember at one point I was eating so little and exercising so much that I went for like a physical at the doctor, and they pulled me aside after the appointment and they asked me if I had an eating disorder.
Wow.
They were so concerned about my weight and how I looked. But even more twisted and sad is that when I left the appointment, I called a friend and I'm like, oh my God, they think I'm anorexic.
Yeah.
I was so proud of myself
Yeah.
that they thought I was so skinny.
Right.
And looking back now, I'm like, that is so twisted and demented that I was proud of how thin and frail I looked. I wasn't actively trying to be anorexic. I wasn't trying to restrict my food. I was just like, whatever, like I don't want to eat so much and I'm going to exercise because I want to be skinny and I want to make sure I'm skinny, Maybe it was like an undiagnosed eating disorder. I don't even know, but
Sounds like it.
yeah. But I was so proud of myself that they thought that there was something wrong with me. Like that's how thin I was, which is so twisted.
It's so twisted.
Yeah. And so, and then I got married and I gained a lot of weight after we got married. And that was like really hard for me. I didn't want to be bigger. I wanted to be small. And so
What do
then
you think that was? What do you think that, like, do you know what caused the weight gain? Stress?
then so I started realizing that there was, as much as I thought I had like access to all food in my house, there was some restrictive stuff. Like we weren't allowed to have certain cereals, only like on the weekends. There was like no soda in my house until I was in high school. We were not allowed to have soda like at all.
Mhm.
So I started noticing when I got married, like I would like buy like all the cereals that I couldn't have. Like when I was a kid, I was like buying them all. And like I was drinking soda constantly, like nonstop. I couldn't stop myself. I was like literally like addicted, like
Right.
going through these binges because
Deprived.
yeah, I was
Right.
this adult now and I had full access to all this stuff and I'm gonna have what I want in my house. And so then I started, buying all that stuff and just eating like I guess like without a care in the world. And maybe also I felt like, you know what, like I don't have to worry anymore. Like I'm on my own and like I have this security of a relationship and I don't need to impress anyone anymore. Like I could just be myself.
Mhm.
And again, like my husband, he didn't care. Like he wasn't like, I married you because you're skinny. Like I knew no matter what, like he loves and accepts me. Like I wasn't like I need to be skinny for my husband. He honestly didn't care how I looked. So I just started like getting out of control and I just couldn't stop eating. Um, and then it got to a point where I got on the scale one day. I didn't even realize how much weight I had gained. And then I stepped on a scale one day and I was like, oh my gosh, this is why my clothes are so tight and I can't fit
Mhm.
into it. Or like I had gained a lot of weight. So I said, oh, I'm going on Weight Watchers. I went on Weight Watchers and I was starving, of course, but I lost all that weight. And then I kept it off, for a long time. And I never went back to that weight again because I guess in a way I had allowed myself to have all that food. And then like I didn't care anymore. Like I didn't want to drink soda anymore. I didn't
Right.
care about those
You made
cereals.
peace with it.
Yeah, like I just didn't, I was like, you know what? I know that I can buy this stuff and I can have it in my house. So like I'm okay now. Like I don't feel so like, this urgent need to like have it because I might never see it again. So
Right.
in that way I kind of healed. Like all of that was great. And I think that's, I lost that weight in an unhealthy way because I was restricting with Weight Watchers, but I ended up keeping it off because then once I went off Weight Watchers, like I just felt better about knowing like I can have whatever I want in my house when I want it. And I don't have to feel like my mom is grocery shopping, so I'm not going to get the things I want.
Mhm.
Um, but then, I started like then I had started having kids and during my first pregnancy, I was obsessed with also like I did not want to get above a certain amount of weight gain for the pregnancy. And I was exercising and being very careful about what I ate, which again, I look back now and I'm like, I was so young and dumb. Like, why was I doing that? I wasn't on a diet, but I was just very careful. And every time I would go and get weighed, I was like, oh my God, please. Like, I don't want to get over that mark of like that goal that I set for myself of the maximum amount of weight I can gain. And I gained less than that even, which is also crazy. Thank God my daughter was healthy. She is healthy. I was not healthy up here, but
Mhm.
everything was fine. And then I just like, of course, I was like, well, I have to lose all the baby weight now, even though I gained barely anything. Like, I need to get back to how I was. And, so then again, I just started into this like disordered eating of like certain foods I couldn't have. I wouldn't allow myself to have them. Exercising again, I did like exercising at this point. I started learning to like it, but there was still the mentality of like working off what I ate or working out to burn calories so that I wouldn't gain weight if I ate certain things. So just like really bad relationship with like exercise and food. Um, and then just I guess like a whole bunch of that. Then I had my next baby and again, going on another diet with her. I did at one point work with a nutritionist who she was actually so fantastic. I feel like she did put me on a diet. She did restrict my calories, but she also taught me how to eat in a way that I had never learned before. Like for the first time in my life, I was actually eating every 2 hours and I was full and I was being mindful of the food that I was eating. Like she taught me about like carbs and proteins and fats and all of these things are necessary for your diet and don't cut things out. So while she did restrict my calories and put me on a diet, I learned a lot from her about nutrition.
Mhm.
So, take away the calorie restriction, I learned so much about how to feed my body through that diet.
Mhm.
So once I stopped doing that, plan with her, I still kept to and I still do it. Like I make sure that, when I'm eating, like I am being careful to include all of those things in my diet. Whereas before I thought I'm not allowed to have carbs, fat, no way, you
Right.
can't do that,
Yeah.
you know? So I
So you're
learned,
protein basically.
yeah, so I learned like all those things are important. I need the protein, I need the carbs, I need the fat. And again, she taught me how to like feed myself. So for that, I was so grateful to her. Um, I didn't feel like I was so restricted on her plan because I was always full. But again, I went from never eating and like skipping meals till probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon to like having a breakfast, having a snack, having a lunch, having a snack, having a dinner. Like, so I was like busting, but even then I wasn't even eating so many calories. Like I wasn't eating what I should have been eating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I lost weight, but again, like I wasn't doing what was good for my body. And then I gained it all back again.
Right.
Um, and again, so like that's just the story. Like, and I just kept going on them and going on them. And then finally a year ago, I went on another one and I was like, this is it. I'm gonna do it. And like I'm not gaining weight anymore. And then when we went on this vacation, and I was just terrified because I'm like, there's nothing to eat. We're in a place where there's like no kosher food, and we had to bring stuff from home, and like we were really limited, and I was so stressed out about the food. I was like, I'm not even enjoying the vacation because all I'm thinking about is I hope I don't gain weight. I hope I hope I don't gain weight. It was awful. So from there, coupled with all the learning I was doing from Tiffany Rowe, and then finding Evelyn Tribole, and then finding all of these intuitive eating, health at every size dietitians, and meeting Rena and meeting you, I like started on this whole journey of like, I'm so done hating the way I look, restricting the way I eat, and just constantly like going on this roller coaster of like diet, undiet, diet, diet, loving and feeling like, oh, I look so great, and then hating the way I look. And like I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I have a daughter who was coming to that age where she was starting to hear that talk from her friends. It was never from me because I would never say about myself, oh, I'm so fat, or oh, I hate myself, or oh, I look disgusting in this. I was always careful about. But she definitely saw me going on diets and like talking to a nutritionist about, being careful about what I eat. And so she knew that I was going on diets. I would
Mm-hmm.
always be like, oh, I just want to be more healthy, and I want to like be careful about like what I eat, and I want to know that I'm eating the right things. I would always phrase it like that, but she's not a dummy. Like she knew
Yeah.
what I was doing.
They all do.
I'm going to the gym because like I want to, work off whatever I ate. Like she knew what I was doing.
Why
And
is
I,
mom eating differently than all of us?
yeah, like she knew. So like, I mean, it happens to be I would always eat pizza and I would always eat that kind of stuff. But like, if they would have like noodles one night, I would make an omelet. And so like,
Right.
she's like, what do you don't eat noodles anymore? Like what's going, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not healthy for you, but it's healthy for me. I don't get it.
Very
Like,
confusing. Very
you know?
confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, so confusing. So I knew like I'm sending mixed messages, and I know that that's a lot of the talk that she was starting to hear at a young age, even in her grade, like fourth, fifth grade, it was starting already because
Mm-hmm.
bodies are starting to change earlier
Yeah.
for her. And it started coming up. And I was like, you know what? I can't be a hypocrite. Like, I can't be the mom that's like, no, you can't diet. They're not good for you. And, you don't need that. But like, I'm doing it myself. And then what, when she's older and she starts doing it, am I going to feel differently? Like, yeah, you should be on a diet. I never want her to feel uncomfortable in her skin. I never want her to hate her body. I never want her to feel like she needs to exercise in order to like punish herself or shrink herself. I just didn't want that. So I'm very much a believer in like I need to be who I want my kids to be. Like that is my MO in life. Like if I want them to be a certain way, I have to live that way. I can't just tell them to be that person.
Right.
So I decided like I'm just not doing it anymore. I'm going to start adopting the intuitive eating. I'm going to start figuring out how to make exercise something that I do just because I love doing it. And thank God I go to a gym that I love going there. I love the classes. Like it's such a mental thing for me. It's not even about what it's doing for me physically. It's just what it does for me mentally and how I feel when I'm there. And I actually find that on my bad body image days, when I go to the gym, I end up feeling so much better. Like it just
Yeah.
helps. It's a place where I'm like, it doesn't even matter what I look like. I know I just did something good for myself. And that's all that matters. And I got myself through that class where I almost like died and I didn't think I could make it. Like, wow, my body is amazing. So it gives me like better appreciation on those days where I'm not feeling good. So that's just where I landed up, where I was just sick of diets, and I realized they weren't working, coupled with like my daughter really hearing a lot from her friends of, like she would be eating like a pizza chip for snack and offer her friend, and they're like, I'm not allowed to have carbs. My mom said I shouldn't eat carbs.
Okay.
You're in sixth grade. What do you mean you shouldn't have
Right.
carbs? You need them for your brain development. Like carbs are the most important source of energy for our bodies. Like, why is an 11-year-old girl saying that? A 12-year-old girl saying that? So I just didn't want any of that for her. And just remembering also like my whole relationship with food and my body, and that time in that doctor's office when they pulled me aside, and I was so proud of that. Like I never want her to think that way. I don't want her to look at other people's bodies and judge the way that I did. I don't want her to look at my mom and be like, "Oh, grandma's not healthy," like I did growing up. I want her to understand that like health again is so much more than how we look. It's not even how we look, but there's so much more that's involved in that. And I want her to understand that like really what's more important for your health is your relationships, that you're in relationships where people love and respect you and value you, that you're happy, that you're getting enough sleep, that you're not using drugs or smoking or drinking, that you are safe, that you live in a safe neighborhood, that you're in a safe home, that you are taken care of financially, that you have a connection to your community. Like I want them to know that's what health is. Exercise and what you put in your body is also important, but that's not the most important.
One component, yeah, 100%. So you're describing basically like what a lot of my clients describe, and also like it's just one of those things where you read the intuitive eating book and you're like, oh, that's why I can't stay on a diet. And that's why when I grew up not having chips or soda or whatever it was, and now I'm binging on it. And now once I give myself full permission to eat it, I'm allowed to have it. And it's like this aha moment, like, oh, that's why I can't like keep this weight off, or that's why I'm so obsessed with food, or that's why I'm hiding in my closet so nobody sees. And it's like, it's really, it's very eye-opening. I mean, I know like I had a similar situation when I read the book, that I had that aha moment, because even though I struggled with disordered eating as a teenager, like seriously, seriously, but once I realized how unhealthy I was at that time, I was like, I never want to do this. I want to teach people about healthy food and balance and everything. But once I read the book, I realized that I still had that disordered, a little bit of that disordered eating thinking, and definitely judging other people for being in a bigger body. And I think somebody asked, like, how could you be overweight and unhealthy? And I would really like to recommend reading the book Intuitive Eating, Anti-Diet, Health at Every Size. But I'll just say, I know this sounds super extreme, but that's kind of like saying, how could someone black be healthy?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Like because we do know that there are so much of the research, they're not testing for confounding variables that are associating overweight and obese with being unhealthy or with having heart conditions. And we know that yo-yo dieting and your weight going up and down and fluctuating is actually much worse for your heart and your health than just staying at a certain size.
Yeah.
We know that weight stigmatization is also very bad for your health. Like all these emotional components that you're talking about, not having friends, not having security, that could give you stress. And being on a diet raises your cortisol levels, which could
Yeah.
also make you gain weight. So the research is there, and like I hope you guys will read the books and you'll understand that like how much. Also, there's no clinically proved way to lose weight safely and keep it off. Think about all the people that you know that who have went on a diet, lost the weight, got all those compliments, and felt like I'm only accepted if I'm this weight. People only recognize me if I'm this weight. I better keep this weight off. They gain the weight because that's just the way our bodies are, and
Yeah.
then they feel horrible about themselves and they have shame and guilt. They feel isolated, they don't go out, they don't have friends. It's like really horrible. Like you're really like painting a picture of like how even in a thin body you could have so much pain and guilt around the way that your body looks. And that we know also like the diet industry is like a $78 billion industry per year. So like they're they're thriving off of us women, or and now even men, hating ourselves and
Yeah.
doing anything for weight loss.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
literally crazy.
Yeah. Something that I read that was so interesting. I'm reading this book now, Body of Truth. And it's talking about like the history of like diet and how like our views of what's healthy have like evolved. And something that she brought up some research that I thought was so interesting. She was talking about how we're all obsessed with like, yeah, but there's healthy food, right? And there's unhealthy food. And she said that they did a bunch of studies, like it wasn't just one. So they did the study like a few times. They replicated the study, so that also makes it something that has more validity. So they did a study where they looked at groups of people and they gave them foods that they enjoyed, that were like within their culture and like these delicious food that they loved. And then they gave them foods that they didn't love so much. And they tested, I guess, like their nutrient absorption in the food, right? So the foods that they loved that were considered maybe not so healthy, they absorbed more nutrients and got more nutritional benefits than the foods that were considered healthier, right? So they gave them like a salad with like, veggies and whatever, on the side. And they absorbed less nutrients from the salad than from heavy, greasy Thai food or whatever it was that they gave them. So their bodies actually got more benefit from the unhealthy food than from the salad. And it was saying like enjoying your food is a huge part of nutrition, right? So if you're going to tell yourself, oh, I'm on a diet, so I'm only going to have carrot sticks. And, even if it's a full lunch, I'm going to have salmon with a salad and a sweet potato on the side because that's the healthy meal. But that's not what you want. Your brain will actually make it in a way that you don't get the full health benefits from that food, right? You might actually be getting more health benefits from that like greasy slice of pizza with the fries on the side than you would be getting from that healthy lunch. And so that's so important to know. Like so much of our eating is tied to our emotional experience. And that's why when people are like emotional eating is bad and we only have to, we make all these food rules about what we have to eat. That's harming your body also. That's not a good thing either. Eating is supposed to be emotional, right? That's what keeps us alive. Like if we like a food, we're going to go eat it, and that's going to ensure that we nourish ourselves. I like eating, so I'm going to do that. That's what keeps me alive. If I hate eating, I'm not going to do it, and then I might die, So eating in itself is an emotional experience. So to say that that's a bad thing, we're kind of not understanding like what emotional eating is. Yes, if we're eating because we're numbing our feelings and we're trying to avoid life and we're hiding away and, whatever it is, and we're doing it to kind of like punish ourselves or damage ourselves, that kind of emotional eating, fine. That's something that we need to work on and examine. But eating in itself is an emotional experience, and that's a good thing. And making sure that you're eating foods that you enjoy, and not because it's like on a list of foods that are supposed to be good for you or that your like nutritionist told you that you have to eat. That's really important. We have to, again, that's why I hate when I hear like, I see a lot of schools now are doing like this health week, like you and I both participate in this health week at the local schools here. And like, whenever I see that, happens to be, I think that the school that we went to is doing it in a way that I feel comfortable, but there's other schools that are doing it. And I see they're doing it in a way that I'm like, oh my God, these kids are getting messages about like good food and bad food, and exercising to earn food. And it's really concerning to me because they're school age kids. And then they're getting these messages now. And it's so upsetting to me, that at such a young age, and again, the longer you're like indoctrinated with it, then the harder it is to kind of see the light.
Right.
It took me 30 something years to finally realize, oh my God, this is like, I was duped. Like I believed all that garbage and all those lies. We're doing the same thing to this younger generation, like, yes, diet culture, like we are talking about it and we are learning about it, and there is a loud voice for body positivity and body respect and health at every size, much louder than there ever was. But these kids are still getting that message because that industry is a lot richer and a lot louder,
Yeah, definitely. And I also tell people this, like I'll have clients in my office, they'll come to me for a few weeks, a few months, whatever it is, and they're like, why am I still feeling so bad? I'm like, because you've been in diet culture for 35 years and
Right.
working with me for a few weeks. So I say, and who's ever listening, if you're interested, I always say like, like listen to podcasts about intuitive eating. Christy Harrison has an amazing one, Food Psych, Rena Reiser, Rachel Goodman, Evelyn Tribole was just interviewed on 10% Happier. And I'll tell them, steep yourself in intuitive eating culture and really like reap the benefits of it. And somebody asked, what are the books? So we recommend Intuitive Eating, written by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. Anti-Diet was just written, amazing book by Christy Harrison. There's also Health at Every Size, which is Linda Bacon, and then there's a ton of other books if anyone's looking for
I have a list on Amazon. I can share it in my stories. I have like an Amazon list that I have all of these books, and they're so great. So I'll share that list with all those book recommendations. There's also one that I just started, which also I think is great if you want to know just about like food science and again how food like how it interacts with our body and kind of learn about like why that whole like good food bad food thing is just not reality. It's called Is Butter a Carb?
Oh, cool.
A really good book. So I'll share the list. Just so interesting. Like you learn so much. Like there's no such thing as a clean food, as like everyone thinks low fat is better for you. Like it's not good for you. It talked even about like organic versus non-organic. Like guys, it's not any healthier. It's just not. They use
It's a lot
pesticides.
more expensive, but yeah.
More expensive, not healthier. So it just debunks a lot of these myths that we have. But again, all the fear mongering and all that stuff, like to get us to buy certain foods and to, this wellness culture, right? Because it's not cool to be on a diet anymore. Like nobody wants to diet. I just care about my health, wellness culture, right? So it's the same thing. It's a diet, just like, just,
Yeah.
So being educated and like you said, listening to those podcasts, steeping yourself in those accounts that talk about anti-diet, body positivity, body respect, that kind of stuff, like your eyes are open and then you start seeing diet culture everywhere. And I have to say, sometimes I regret that I have learned about this because it's so upsetting that it's everywhere. Every simcha you go to, every table you sit at, every restaurant you're at, I was getting my hair done today. They were talking about it at the salon. I get my nails done. I hear it at the nail place. I hear it in my office. I hear it in the coffee store. It's everywhere. And I'm like, oh my God. Like sometimes I wish I was still ignorant because it doesn't stop, Yeah. And I've learned, I keep my mouth closed and I'm just like, that was me once upon a time, and like maybe they'll learn, maybe they won't. Like it's just sad that this is, where we're at, but it's everywhere.
Yeah, but I want to say something. I want to validate that, and I also want to say that I probably learned this from you and other therapists that I follow. That like this is also like super powerful, and I was talking about this at the school that our emotions, even our negative emotions, are really not bad. They're like our smoke alarm that we want to do something. So if you use that anger and that like frustration of like people talking about these things to communicate that here on Instagram and reach so many people and explain like this is upsetting, this is painful, this is years and years and years of me, like Christy Harrison, her new book Anti-Diet, it says how diet culture has stolen your time, money, and energy. It does. It steals years off your life because think about it. You just said for like 20 years on and off a diet, on and off a diet, on vacation with your family, not thinking about the fun that you're having with your family. You're thinking about what you're eating and how stressed out you are. It steals our well-being. And I think somebody even asked like I know that it sounds like crazy that that we're talking about this. Like I do know that. Like I know that so many people are like, it can't be that you're overweight and healthy. It's impossible. But like I really just want this to just plant seeds for you to realize how many years are you going to hate yourself because of your weight? And how much energy are you going to spend on how you look? And I'm not saying to not take care of yourself at all. My number one favorite thing in the entire world is self-care. I think you should take good care of yourself. And I think that you could take really good care of yourself with good nutrition and eating every 2 to 3 hours and drinking. But like you said before, the article that said you don't absorb as much nutrients when you don't enjoy the food, which I remember reading that. So I must have read it in one of these books. I'm just so everyone knows, I'm actually writing a letter to healthcare providers to give them a little bit of education on the research out there, because I really want them to know. And even if they're not behind it, at least maybe they'll look at the research. But that was one of the articles I was quoting, so I have to look for the article. But I just want people to know that, like, diet culture kind of thrives off of us hating ourselves and shaming ourselves and blaming ourselves. And you could live a life that has food freedom and joy and happiness, and of course you could associate good food with comfort and family. That's what we all do. When a baby's born, the first thing a baby does is drink sweet milk. It has lactose. If they're breastfeeding, even if they have a bottle, and like, don't get me started on how shaming we are with bottle feeding. I don't want to talk about that, but we connect that, and it's a beautiful thing. Think about how much pleasure we could get from food, and how much joy we could have, how much celebration we could have from food. And it's just seeing food in a positive way. And I did speak at a health fair, and I spoke to 6th and 7th graders, and I spoke to them about nutrition, and I spoke to them about what a fat is and a carb and a protein. But it's like adding instead of subtracting. It's like noticing what you like and incorporating nutrition, but without any like shame or guilt or foods are bad. Never. Because even as you're describing, the more you deprive yourself of that food, the more you will binge on it.
Right. Yeah. And I think we have to remember that one of the, like, I guess, tenets of, like, I mean, one of the ideas of intuitive eating is like, every food has a time and a place. Like, there's room for all foods in your diet. So birthday cake, like, of course you're not going to eat that every day. Maybe when you first start intuitive eating, you will, because you haven't had cake forever. But like, there's a time and a place for birthday cake. Like, if you ate birthday cake every day, you probably wouldn't feel so good. But when you're at a birthday, have a piece of cake, and don't have a give me a tiny sliver, and then you're eating everyone's frosting after that. Like, have the piece of cake and enjoy it, and have it with a cup of coffee even, or whatever it is. Like, just enjoy. And the more you give yourself permission to enjoy food, the less you feel like, oh my God, I have to have it. Oh my God, I have to have it. Or I'm being so good because I'm not having it. Because then the next time you're around something, or it could even just be later on, something else presents itself. And because you deprived yourself of that cake, now you can't control yourself around that next thing. So if you would just give yourself permission to enjoy, and I see it with my own kids, like, I've changed the way I approach their eating, very much like applying this, division of responsibility stuff and intuitive eating. Like, I see for them, like, they'll take I did a post on this once, a story about how we were at my niece's bat mitzvah, and there was like a giant candy table, and some of the kids were like going insane. Like, you should have seen the mountains. I was like, okay, I know which kids don't get candy at home. Like, right. My kids took, and I didn't say a word to them. I'm like, guys, just go get what you want. So on the table was candy, cookies, and fruit. They took a little plate of candy, and they took a plate of fruit. I did not tell them to take the fruit. I just said, take what you want. Back to the table with the candy and the fruit. They took a couple pieces of candy from the cake, and I'm not saying one's better than the other. Obviously, we know, though, that the fruit does have more nutritional value than the candy, right? So, and, like, obviously I want them to have some fruit in their diet, because we were just like on an eating tour the whole vacation. But they took this plate of candy, and they took the plate of fruit, and they were eating the candy, and then they stopped and ate more of the fruit than the candy. It turned out I finished the candy plate, right? Because of my deprivation mentality still, but I didn't say a word to them about it, and like, that was it. And they were happy and satisfied and like, done. And I wasn't like, I'm so happy you guys ate the fruit. Like, no, did you guys agree you had enough? Like, I don't think one is better than the other. It was just, I loved seeing how our bodies naturally crave foods that have more nutrients and are better for us. And we're able to enjoy them more when we give ourselves permission to eat. So in that case, they enjoyed the candy, and they got what they needed from that. And they enjoyed the fruit, and they got what they needed from that. And I was like, it was so like empowering for me to see, like, if I just let them be, they choose the foods that are good for them. And I hear parents say that all the time. If I let my kid have cookies, he's never going to stop. If I let them have candy, they're never going to stop. Not true. It's just not true. You don't eat cookies until you die. Like, you will eventually stop. So give them the cookies, give them the pasta, give them the candy, give them access to it. They will eventually stop, and they will learn to be like, you know what? I had a couple, like, I feel good. That was enough. Now I'm going to have something else, Yeah. They might reach for the more nutrient dense foods that you want them to have. And of course we want that. That's another thing people think intuitive eating, like, oh, you're just allowed to eat whatever you want and it's an excuse to binge and eat disgusting food. No, in the beginning, that's kind of like what we teach is like, you need to have it all, right? It's that pendulum they give, right? Like, you need to just have it all, because once you give yourself permission to have all of that, then you're going to come back and like find that balance of like knowing, trusting yourself that you can have some of this and you can have some of that. And so the same thing will happen with kids when they're so deprived for so long, they are going to go crazy at first. And you just have to be patient and you just have to say, okay, they need this. They need to get over that hump. And they need to see like this food will always be available and you can trust that it's going to come back and you don't have to freak out and feel like you need to, hang on to it. And then once they get over that hump, like your food battles are over, and then everything is like good and safe for them. And I'm so grateful that I discovered this for myself, but even more so for them, because I see that they will have a healthier relationship with exercise, with food, with movement, with everything. So I feel like I didn't just like save myself, like I really saved them a lifetime of agony. And again, they know what's out there. I talk to them about that, like that other people don't really buy this. Like people do believe that certain foods are good and certain foods are bad. People do believe that if you're in a bigger body, you're not healthy. But like, we don't believe that, like we're learning differently. So I want them to know that also, that they're going to hear conflicting messages, but like, I want them to know that this is what we understand. And this is what we know to be health in our house. I don't need them to go educating their friends. I don't want them to, because I think that's overwhelming and a lot of responsibility for a kid, and I don't think they can. But I just want them to know it for themselves, So when they hear a friend saying, oh, I can't have that, my mom said I can't have carbs, they could just say like, all right. In their head, be like, wow, that's like sad and I feel bad for her. Just eat your chips and enjoy. Like, eat your friend. Don't tell her carbs, this carb. It's fine. That's what mom is telling her. Like, it's not your job to fix it.
Right.
So I think that's important. Like, just giving them the tools to know it for themselves, but also then just to know like how to deal with it on the outside when they see it on the outside, not to get overwhelmed and feel like, oh my God, but they believe that and I have to fix it. You don't have to fix it. This is knowledge that I want you to have for yourself so that you are safe and healthy. And if someone asks you, you can share, but like, don't go trying to teach the world. Like, you're too little. Just enjoy your life,
Yeah. I don't think that people don't really like unsolicited advice. And I don't, I'm not so into like the anti-diet movement because I don't like to shame people for being on a diet. I find it very hypocritical. I personally, I feel like, okay, for the last 100 years, we were all in diet culture, and now we learned a different way, thankfully, and now we're trying to implement it. But we don't have to shame anyone for wanting to change their body. It's so normal. The whole world's on a diet. But I did want to share this about. I wanted to say this also for those of you who are learning about intuitive eating here for the first time. We do know that a lot of people just adapt this. There's 10 principles. So many people cling to the principle unconditional permission to eat, making peace with food, and that's one principle.
Yeah.
There's gentle nutrition. There's joyful movement. There's honoring your hunger, feeling your fullness, the satisfaction. There's so many different principles, coping with your emotions without using food. So please don't just, think of this as one principle, or like, oh, I'm doing intuitive eating, I could just eat whatever I want and just accept my body. Like, it's a real internal process. And Rena Reiser actually taught me this, that even though the third principle is making peace with food, she actually does it last. And it's much easier when you do it last because it's not as scary. You've already learned your hunger, fullness cues. And I'm giving a 6-week course now doing intuitive eating, and that's going to be my last class. And I actually asked my clients to bring food to the class so we could do it together and support each other through it.
Right.
I also wanted to share this story about my daughter. So my daughter's 7, and before I learned about division of responsibility, which is a feeding model written by Ellen Satter, who's a dietitian and a social worker. She's really very knowledgeable. My daughter was the kid who was stealing all the food at the party, for sure. I was like, I'm a dietitian. I'll teach her everything she needs to know. She doesn't have to eat that. She doesn't have to eat that. But like, it obviously didn't work because she wants to eat what her friends are eating, or she wants to eat whatever. And she came home from a Hanukkah party this year and she said, my stomach really, really hurt. So I asked her, what did you eat? So she said I had 2 donuts and I had 2 latkes or something. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes fried food could really hurt our stomach. It's very hard for your stomach to absorb or whatever I said, digest all that fat at once. So now we just went to like a party together. We went to Malavamaka together, and she's like, I don't want to eat so much fried food because I know it hurts my stomach. And
Mm.
I didn't say anything to her about the fried food. She brought it up to me, and it's like our kids and us, we are so threatened by diets because they really do threaten our autonomy. They tell us what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat, what foods we should like. Like you always make the joke, like who likes kale salad? I happen to really like kale, but like yeah,
Nope.
it's no, I really do. But like everyone's telling me, oh, you have to try these Gigi crackers. I'm like, these taste like I don't even know what. I'm sorry.
Right. Right. And but we're convincing ourselves we like that stuff. We're convincing ourselves we like the sugar-free whatever because we think that that's what we're supposed to like, you know? But again, like we have, and I think that's such an important point, especially for kids. Like intuitive eating is so great on so many levels, but also because you're teaching your kids to trust their bodies. You're giving them that bodily autonomy. Like that's such an important thing for so many different things in their lives. You're teaching them boundaries, right? For themselves. Like you feel full, you had enough, like great, you can stop eating instead of pushing and you didn't eat enough. You need to have more. Finish your plate, or you had too much. No more for you. That's it. You know, like we're teaching them that they can trust their feelings, their sensations, and that they can draw that line and be like, I'm finished now, or I would like some more, and we honor that, you know. I mean, something that Ellen talks about, Satter, is, you know, those feeding times and division of responsibility is making meal times and giving your kids structures around times, which is great.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a whole separate life, but we're giving them that opportunity to really exercise that independence and learning to trust themselves and how they feel. And that benefits them in so many ways besides food and besides, you know, their diet. So I think that's something really important that parents should consider, because usually that the earliest boundary violation we have with our kids is with food. You
Mm-hmm.
know, no more of that. No, you can't have that. No, you didn't finish your plate. You can't leave the table. That's violating their boundaries. And it's also teaching them to doubt their own inner cues, like, oh, maybe I'm not full, or maybe I am full, right? Let them be the judge of when they've had enough. And you can help them, like, oh, does your tummy feel full? You feel like you had enough? You can set that limit of like, okay, just so you know, this next meal time will be at, you know, in an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. But give them the opportunity to listen to themselves and honor themselves. I think that's so important. And that's such a great way to show your kids respect, and help them to build confidence that they can trust themselves and make decisions for themselves about themselves, which is what we want them to do, you
Right.
know?
Right. Yeah, I have a lot of tell me when you have to go, by the way, because I don't know what time it is. Um,
Probably going to run out of time soon.
okay. Wow. So I have a lot of clients that tell me like, what am I supposed to do? I can't get my kids to eat this or that, or even teenagers, and I'm like, well, what are you going to do when they're 20?
Right.
You're not going to be there telling them what to eat or what not to eat. So you have to teach them how to learn to listen to themselves, because ultimately they're going to decide anyways. Like what you were describing when you got married, you were like, hey, I could just buy soda and I
Yeah.
could just eat whatever I want. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
So, should we answer some of the questions?
Yeah, we could look,
Do we
but
have time?
we're gonna run out of time any second, but let's look.
Okay.
We're gonna save the live. I'm gonna put the swipe up for my Amazon book list
Yeah,
on
that'd be
my
great.
keys.
If anyone has,
Um,
then you could ask now. We
uh,
love Rachel.
please explain, what do you do different now that keeps you healthy? Again, because health is so multifaceted, like for me, health is not about like being a size anymore or a weight. For me, health is about like moving my body, making sure I'm getting sleep, eating the things that make me feel good, honoring what I need, you know, making sure that I am nourishing myself, that I'm eating, but also instead of making decisions based on fear of like, I really want to have that slice of pizza, but like I know it's not good for me, is I want to have that slice of pizza. Am I in the mood for that? Like, yeah, I'm going to have it now. And then eating it and enjoying it and like not feeling bad about it. And then not being like, well, I need to sign up for 2 classes tomorrow because I had a slice of, you know,
Right.
health is so much more than, like we said earlier, it's not about what you're putting in your body and how you're moving your body. There's so many other things that are impacting your health besides that. Um, So I think that's like so important for us to remember that it's not, I think now I'm honoring my health more than I was before.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think it's important for people to
What?
know. I also think it's important for people to know that there is actually a diagnosis called orthorexia. And that is when you're unhealthily obsessed with only eating clean or healthy. And that's not healthy.
No.
So if you're thinking about food or what you're eating 80% of the day or more, let's say 100%, 110%, that's because you're dreaming about it. That's an